Welcome to episode 7 of Be Fierce Multisport podcast. I'm Jill Bartholomew, host and owner of Be Fierce Multisport, and I'm here today with Thomas Skelton, head coach at Merged Multisport. And the topic we're going to talk about today is we were both down this past weekend at the 70.3 Chattanooga race that happened. And we wanted to provide a race recap and kind of give our thoughts on how it went. Some things went well, some not as well. And we were just talking beforehand about some of our observations. So, Thomas, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah. Jill, like you said, my name is Thomas Skelton. I'm the founder and head coach at Merge Multisport. And we are Western North Carolina based, but soon to be back Greenville, South Carolina based coaching company, but with athletes kind of all across the country and in Canada. We were at Chattanooga was one of our team races for the year. So we had nine athletes racing. And, overall it was a great day. It was a great race, as Chattanooga always kind of does. And we've been there, over the last probably 6 years. I'd wager somewhere around 8 to 10 times for the half and the full. So pretty familiar with Chattanooga, the course itself, et cetera. So, but yeah, it was definitely, we were talking a little bit about a little bit of the different energy that it had. And so, yeah, we can kind of get into it however you see fit.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting because you were there as a coach and, you had several athletes there. I did enjoy seeing all your social media posts. Mine were from a completely different angle because, I was there as an athlete. For me, this was a redemption race. I raced Chattanooga last year and my chain broke at like mile 21 on the bike. So I sat there on the side of the course for an hour and a half waiting for SAG with a chain breaker so we could spend 2.5 minutes to fix my bike and get me running. Right? So it was completely different angles. So I think this is a good conversation. But yeah, let's start off with, so the swim was canceled, right? You drove in from North Carolina. I drove in from outside Philly, a 16-hour drive. And then as we're pulling into Chattanooga is when the message popped up that said, hey, surprise, TVA can't control the water in the river, which is already generally fast flowing on a normal day, right? And the swim is canceled. So how did you react to that? How did your athletes react to that?
I think everybody reacted really well, and not to get into philosophical type stuff, but, we try and talk a good bit about, managing what you can manage, right? Yada, yada, control what you can control, all that stuff, and try not to let the things you can't control impact you. But it's, you train for and you go to an event expecting and hoping you're going to get the swim, bike, run, right? So certainly everybody was a little frustrated. I do think it was the right call to do it ahead of time. I think they were trying to keep people from getting in the water prior to the race to swim because the current was so strong and they didn't want to have to deal with any fallout potentially from that. But as far as the race itself goes, the water was moving really strong. It's not a clean river, but it's not a dirty river. We've all probably swam in significantly worse. Definitely water was much darker and much just kind of funky looking compared to normal. So I think it was the right call, and it was nice for them to do it ahead of time. So we had the opportunity to kind of talk, discuss, and get everybody to kind of settle down about it. But everybody was pretty disappointed for sure.
Yeah, I know. So we ended up getting there at we drove through the night. We ended up getting there at 7:30 in the morning. And so we drove up to the park that's on the other side of the dam and, to that beach. And, there were people swimming in the water. And I was like, oh, I got all my gear in the car. I could change in the car and go swimming. And it was right around then that one of my friends on the Betty squad texted me and she's like, please don't go swimming. The local tri club had, I guess, canceled their morning swim because of high bacterial counts. So, at first when I saw that it was canceled, I thought it was because of water quality, not because of the rage current that they were expecting. So, we both got there and, I just felt like the vibe was different. And I wasn't sure, last year was I was newer to the sport. I had kind of come off of more marathon running and leaned a lot. Last year was the first year I really leaned hard into triathlon. And, so I was excited. It was a big race. it's a huge triathlon. Like as far as triathlons go, like it's a huge participation, right? Like 3,000-ish people. And it was a pro series last year, which added a lot of excitement. But like just felt like the vibe was off. And I couldn't tell, like, was it because the swim had gotten canceled? Was it just because it wasn't a pro series? Was it something else? But like the more the week went on, the more like it just kind of felt weird.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. And I mean, it had a pro field, and it had a good competitive pro field.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's, yeah.
and that threw us off too because it had a large pro field, but it wasn't part of the pro series. And I didn't know that they had pro races that weren't part of the pro series.
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, I don't want to say everything felt kind of anticlimactic, but maybe it was a little bit of just that from the swim and, people getting ready for the time trial start and whatnot. So yeah, I think there were some potential storms in the forecast that kind of never really came to fruition, right? I think it was looking like it was going to be pretty stormy Saturday for dropping off the bikes, and then nothing happened. It got warm and sunny, but that was about it. So
I was,
I don't know.
looking at the forecast 3 days out, it sure looked like we were going to have a pretty wet ride on Sunday. I was all prepared for it to be a wet bike, and we ended up having gorgeous weather. So like that's a bonus.
Yep, absolutely, for sure. It was honestly, conditions wise, were great on the day for racing. I mean, it was
Mhm.
overcast, almost no wind for the bike. The sun started coming out probably for some people on their second loop of the run, for others when they were starting the run. But I think the high was 80, 81-ish, somewhere around in there. It never
Yeah.
got scorching. There were definitely some people that struggled with the heat. We were up near the end of the pedestrian bridge where somebody collapsed. He was okay.
Oh, really?
But yeah, it was a little scary for a bit. But so I think it got hot enough for some people to be problematic. But as far
Yeah.
as a lot of our races are concerned, it never got brutal hot.
Yeah, the sun came out for me maybe a third or halfway through my second loop. And I will say once I started the second loop, obviously the run course got a lot more crowded. Um, that's when I actually did see quite a few people cramping, and a couple cramping like really bad, like sitting on the ground cramping. So that was unexpected. You don't see that often. And I was actually wondering if, like, as a coach, like with the time trial start, without the bike, like that changes your strategy for the day, right? It changes how you approach like warm up. It changes how you approach like hydration and nutrition. How were you thinking about it? How was your athletes thinking about it? How are you advising your athletes?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really. I think there's two things. I think one, we don't really think about how much the swim does to kind of help us warm up and get ready for the bike, right?
Mhm.
Moving blood, even whether you kick a little or kick a lot, it doesn't matter. And then even having to run out of the water all the way to transition, like it's kind of preparing your legs to get on the bike. And, so the thing that we had talked about was just like, there's nothing good that's going to come from the first 20 minutes of the biking too hard, right? And so, we can't go down there and bring 20, 30 trainers for people to, excuse me, hop on and spin for a little bit to get ready. I think Sam Long in his post-race video was talking about going for like a 2-mile jog before the race to kind of get warmed up. So, but I think anytime you have people, the time trial starts, you run the risk of seeing people having issues
Mhm.
because they don't have the same maybe confidence or level of freedom to kind of stick to what their plan maybe would be, and they try and race a little more dynamically based on who's around them. And I
Mhm.
think for the most part, except for very pointy end, I don't want to throw out like numbers, but I think no matter what, like for the most part, you need to ride your race, right? Nothing good's going to come from doing anything different. But I think a lot of people probably didn't race their race, and they tried to race other people around them.
Yeah, as an athlete, I was afraid of that because, normally, I'm kind of like the back end of the front third coming out of the water usually. And so, you get on the course and it's not a crowded course, but there's definitely people out there. And where I started, this time I was pretty far out front. I didn't see a lot of people for actually pretty until like the last couple of miles. And, so for me, I was like, how hard do I need to go to have the placement where I want to have the placement? And so that first like 20-ish miles, wherever that sharp left turn is, I was like going hard. At one point I looked down at my power meter and my average watts over like the past like 30 minutes. And I was like, holy crap, honey, you need to slow down or you're not going to finish this race.
Yeah, this might get bad, right?
Right. And, I did Texas 3 weeks ago, and, that was a completely different race. The swim did not get canceled. It was a very, very warm swim. And it felt like swimming through drying concrete at times. It was weird. Everybody's times were slower there. And then the bike, first lap there was great, but then the sun came out, and with the sun came the wind, right? And, it was so different. And here I'm like, oh, how hard can I push and like not have the run suck too bad? So I pushed at like 85% the whole time, and my run sucked. It didn't suck as much as I thought it was going to, but it did. But you're right. It's like in a normal triathlon when we have all three and we start with the swim, like you kind of learn how to pace each. But without one, you're like, wait, I'm starting without a 700 calorie deficit. How do I use that?
Yeah.
And like, how do I know that I went too hard or not hard enough? And, looking at the finish times, I think the pointy end was a lot bigger than it normally is. Like in my age group, which we had just under 100 finishers, which is huge for my age group. So the women 45, 49 is usually a big age group. It's usually pretty competitive, but like this was hyper competitive. I was looking, like the pointy end of ours was like 30 people deep. Usually it's like 6.
Yeah. I had a buddy who was racing, guy I used to coach, and he got off the bike. He's in the 50-54 age group, and he got off the bike. I think he biked 216 and change, which was a great bike out there.
Yeah.
And normally 216 in his age group would probably put him in the top 3.
Yeah.
And he was in 7th place. And, I told him as he was running out, I was like, hey, I tried to give him, hey, you're in 7th place. You're 5 minutes off the top 3. You're 2 minutes off top 5. When I told him he was in 7th place, he was just like, whoa. Like his face just glossed over. He was like, I just crushed that bike and I'm in 7th. So it was definitely a more competitive day for sure. There's no doubt about that.
So let's talk about the time trial start. It was my first time doing a time trial start in a Ironman branded race, right? I've obviously done time trial start in time trials. But what I observed, which I thought was strange, and I'm curious if it continued, is because, like the first couple hundred bibs is a mix of people whose bibs are based on their time versus like, you have the PC athletes and you have AWA athletes and foundation, and XC was there for this race. So you have like kind of a mix of abilities up there. I thought it was a bit strange. It felt like a lot of people were going off the line like it was a Sunday stroll.
So we were positioned maybe 70 yards, 60, 70 yards down the course from the start line, kind of on the left side. So we got down there and we basically hung out there the whole time while all the bikers were riding, kind of trying to see all of my people and friends and just giving cheers. And it was actually really interesting because even the first couple hundred that went off, you had people that were honestly standing up and smashing it. And you see people that maybe shouldn't be standing up and smashing it. And I don't mean...
So you saw me sprinting the first 500.
No. Oh no. But but then you see other people that also they are like sitting up like they're for a Sunday stroll. And so it definitely was on one hand there was an obvious an effort to try and seed people kind of sequentially based on abilities. But then that's how it is. I feel like that's how it is even in like local pool swims, like pool sprints.
Yeah.
People seed and 10 people in, there's someone doing breaststroke when someone else is swimming, 115 per 100 right behind them.
It's self-seed. There's no proof of time. It's the honor system. And the honor, this is the thing, I think every sport has this where there's this perception of, well, everybody else is seeding themselves a corral faster than they really should be. So I should too. And, I definitely, heard some chatter about that, during, earlier in the race, earlier in the day, and then after the race, it was like, wow, I should, some people felt they should see themselves further behind. Some people felt they should see themselves further ahead because everybody else was doing it.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think for me, I mean, my thoughts are, I don't. This is a whole different rabbit hole. I would love to eventually see Ironman potentially having like maybe I'm going to say competitive division and completion division, right? So if you have some people like, hey, I know I'm going, I want to compete, I'm trying to get a slot to Worlds, right? Like, cool, you're in the completion division, and the
Yeah.
motos are going to be closer to watch you guys. There's maybe it's a mass start for
You
those
know,
groups too. So I could have
you
seen a
know,
time trial start for age groups would have been nice.
it's really interesting that you say that. Because I agree with you. I was looking the other day, so was it Wakanda earlier this year used Race Ranger for I think it's like 200 or 300 of the age groupers, which are like what you described. They're the like more competitive, and then and they had to pay an extra fee, I guess, for the rental of the unit or something, and then the rest, was kind of your normal age group race. And I think that's a great idea. Like logistically, that would be a nightmare for Ironman. But I'm like, yeah, from what I observed, and the second half of that bike, we're hauling, right? Like I know what my average was, and it was not trivial. And people, mostly men, two women, and the rest men, were passing me on the second half of the bike. And I saw so much behavior that I wouldn't have expected that far out front, right? Like these are all people who are fast, right? This group finished that bike in under 2:25, right? Which is fast, at least in my mind. Still, you had packs of people clumping up, 2, 3 wide on the road. And like the first couple of miles, like, okay, as people are getting out of transition and getting into place. But it was as if drafting rules didn't exist. And, I would have thought that at the front end of the age groups, there would have been some referees. I didn't see a single one the entire time I was on the bike. I assume they were all.
Really.
I assume they were all with the pros. I did not see one referee on while I was on the bike.
I know we saw two take off while we were down there, but just two. And it's only like it sticks in my head a little extra because, to be really honest, like the second
Mm-hmm.
motorcycle almost like hit people as they were merging into like the little coned area. It was, yeah,
That's not.
irrelevant for this point, but that's all we saw. We saw two motorcycles heading out. But yeah, I mean, two motorcycles to kind of try and manage the drafting and
With
in an
3,000 out.
event with
Yeah.
3,000 people. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and this was, like we were talking earlier, one of my concerns with the time trial start being seeded by abilities was you were going to end up clumping people probably
Mm-hmm.
closer together. And I know for a fact, I'm sure that there are people that go, well, other people are drafting, I'm going to do it as well. And I'm not validating
Oh
it. And I
yeah.
would never support
No.
somebody doing that, but I know that mindset happens. I
So
mean, we could
but
go down a rabbit hole there.
but it's like, for me personally, like when I'm out there, I don't know if you're the same way, because you also obviously race too. Is when I'm out there, I'm like, yeah, I haven't seen a referee, but I don't know who's behind me. And like I've been on races where, when you're out there kind of in the like front quarter, where like I've been on races where I've had referees like following me for quite some distance and then eventually pass me,
Yeah.
right? And the only reason I know that is because I see them in the pictures, right? That eventually show up from finisher picks
Yeah.
after you beg them for the pictures while you're on the bike. I think that's hysterical. You get pictures while you're in the swim. You get pictures you're coming out of the swim. You get pictures on the run, and then the bike. I'm like, where are they? They're never there. You see the
Yeah.
photographers, but not the pictures.
Oh, yeah.
But
Absolutely.
but yeah. Now I had one guy. He passed like there were like 3 wide passing me. It was like a full peloton. It was like a mini peloton. And then he like as soon as he passes me, and I'm doing like then, he passes me, and then he like stops pedaling to while he pulls his water bottle out and he starts swerving across the road. I like, man, could you have done that before you passed me?
That tracks. I mean, it
Just,
does. It
but then
tracks.
like in all fairness, right? Me trying my best to abide by the rules. Um, you know, now I'm in a spot where like I'm backpedaling to give him the space so that I can then once I give him the space so that I can then attempt to overtake him. And knowing full well that as soon as he gets his act together, he's going to overtake me again, right? And you end up with like that yo-yo effect. So what did your athletes think of the bike?
Yeah, I mean, so I think as a whole, everybody loved it. I think, I had one athlete, she's done a couple of other races, halves and fulls, and they've all been really flat races.
Hmm.
So we're kind of, this was, well, I don't think it's fair to call Chatty a hilly race by any means.
This is a flat race. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, but for her, like in pancakes, like Galveston, kind of a
Yeah,
Cozumel, right? So this
yeah.
is, but yeah, she
I
loved
was
it. Everybody
yeah,
loved it.
yeah. I was going through a race review of a couple athletes doing Eagleman, and we were looking at it. And we're like, oh, 63 feet. So yeah, compared to that, this was I forget
Yeah,
what my computer registered.
it's usually
It's like 2,000.
2,200 or so
Yeah,
for the half.
yeah. And I live in
Yeah,
Southeast PA, so anything under like 5,000, we don't consider super hilly.
yeah, absolutely.
At that distance, we get like 1,000 every 10 yards, 10
Yep.
10 mile. But what they think of the time trial start? Like, had they done it before? Was it new to them?
Think I'm trying to remember because we talked about this. I want to say 4 or 5 had done time trial starts
Hmm.
before, whether it was at Chatty or other races. Unfortunately, it's been a frequent thing lately, but I don't think
Yeah.
anybody had a problem with it. There was confusion for some about where they should try and seed themselves and
Mhm.
whatnot, but we kind of got that cleared up pretty easy.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, everybody enjoyed it. Yeah, they didn't have any issues.
Yeah,
That
I was a little nervous at the start, but then it's like beep, 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 beep. It's like, okay, I know how this goes. It's just
yeah,
a slightly different sport than I'm used to hearing the beeps on.
yep,
I
absolutely.
was more concerned about like the first like 100 feet. I saw a number of chain drops and people who are in the wrong gear and the stuff that we normally get, but like not spaced as closely together.
Yeah. I think we saw 3 bottles come out also in like the first 70 yards.
How is that possible?
I could not tell you, absolutely no idea, but definitely it was 2 or 3. I think it was 3. 3 bottles came out, and like one guy noticed it, and he like shook his head in frustration. And I was like, "You just started. It's gonna take you 30 seconds." Just we were yelling like, "Get your bottle, get your bottle!" Nothing, nothing. Just let it go.
Oh,
So yeah, but I think the railroad tracks were always an issue, but I don't think anybody lost bottles over the railroad tracks.
yeah,
Everybody was pretty well prepared for kind of the left turn and the little hill going up Andrews and coming through Chickamauga, and so I think everybody was
yeah,
well prepared.
yeah. I
So I
think
think everybody liked the course, the
I
bike.
mean the railroad tracks are of course bumpy. Like you can't fix that.
Yeah.
And that particular set of rail tracks is particularly gnarly. But it felt like they did a better job of evening it out than last year. Like last year
Okay.
it had a mat over it, and I guess I heard later that they put pool noodles over the tracks underneath the mat, which is why so many bottles were lost. This year they put plywood between the tracks,
Nice.
which seemed to like it. There was still like an initial bump, but it was not nearly as bad as it was last year. Like I remember, last year there were bottles everywhere, and this year there were still a lot of bottles. But like, the triangular like frame bottle on this Speed
Mhm.
Concept, like that one is remarkably hard to lose, right? It
Absolutely.
is held in there with a monster grip. And last year there were tons of them all over around the railroad tracks. This year I only saw one on the course, which that one where it was, I assumed it was someone who just dropped it versus like bouncing out of the frame.
For
So
sure.
like last year it was really rough. Like even the between the arms one with the straw, the X Lab one, there were a couple of those on the ground last year. And like I don't know how you lose those, but people did. But yeah, I didn't see, coming back into town, there were obviously a lot of bottles around the railroad tracks, but not nearly as much as I would expect. What I
Nice.
did find interesting was I saw 3 bottle cages on the ground. I'm like, how do you lose a bottle cage?
I mean, well, if you've done any wrenching on the average triathlete's bike,
Yeah.
you will you will probably find more rusted, stripped, worn out bolts and whatnot. So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
It
who knows?
doesn't take much.
No,
Like
definitely not.
my BTA bolts, every time I take that BTA off, I'm having to replace the bolts because they're all rusty and they're like all brand new. But I mean, it's like that environment is so harsh right there. Got
For sure,
sweat
absolutely.
and salt coming out of the hydration, I love the X Lab one, where, it's got the little port and you kind of fly through the hydration station while you're squeezing
Oh
the
yeah.
bottle in and then toss it. The downside is like your headset and that everything up there just like gets demolished with salt.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the unavoidable things, I think. But you could get some like titanium bolts if you can find out the right size of what all the
Mhm.
hardware is and replace it with titanium, and then it won't rust. But it's it's not a I don't know. You can just change them out every season, and it's not
I was I
that's
was gonna
relatively
say
inexpensive.
I have this whole kit of like 200 bolts of various sizes that I think I paid like $4 on Amazon for. I'm like, it's fine. I don't need
Yeah.
titanium bolts for that price. You
True.
know?
True. True. Yeah.
So, okay, so we got through the time trial.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about like hydration and nutrition. How did your athletes approach it?
I mean, honestly, kind of just as per normal. I mean, I think breakfast. One of the things we talked about was, and kind of circling back to pre-time trial start, is just
Mhm.
kind of bringing a little extra snack with them. As far as on the bike nutrition, not really too much different. I mean, obviously the nice thing that we don't have to make up too much of make up any sort of a deficit from the swim, but I still think, for the most part, the amount of calories that we're going to take in on the bike, I'd rather have somebody take in an extra 30-60 grams of carbs more than they
Yeah.
need, as long as their stomach can handle it. So maybe they're, ideally they're getting out of the swim and not being in, or, being in a very minor deficit, and then taking it in, and we just don't have that bit of a deficit. So it's just easier to get off the bike without any sort of or at least less of a deficit than they normally would. So everybody's stuck to kind of their normal plan, that they would have executed on the bike in general to try and set them up for a good run.
Yeah, I changed mine a little bit. I've been mostly using Mortal, for hydration just because that's what's on course, right? I did start out like with I had one bottle in the back with it at like normal ratio, but what I started with up front in the BTA, I had cut in half just to, try to compensate for like not having lost it all on the swim. So that seemed to work well for me. I have a nasty habit of like over consuming electrolytes, which I always pay for, on the second half of the run. So, this one I was happy that didn't happen, but
Just get stuck into a porta potty,
I've never
or
never had that happen. But no, like you get like that like nauseous feeling. And, I didn't have that happen. We're like in Texas and at Nice and at Lake Placid, on the fulls around, it strikes at like mile 14, you get like that really like, oh my God, I need to puke. Except that there's nothing there because all you've been consuming for the last 8 hours is gels, right? That's kind of one of the challenges I'm trying to solve right now is like, how do I make it past mile 14 without like having, feeling like I need to puke? But back to the race. So the run, it felt a lot smoother this year. Maybe it was because everyone wasn't fighting with like, swim equipment mixed in with their bike equipment. But it felt like the exit, and I think it was the exact same layout, but it just felt like everything went smoother this year than in the past.
yeah, I mean, I feel like, we posted up kind of right before the Martin Arch, right? As you're kind of running up from the river
Yeah, yeah.
under the arch and then up to the highway. We kind of were right there, just hanging out, checking in on everybody, trying to remind everybody that hill's kind of naughty, right? And that the sun was trying to come out and to be patient and settle in and just wait. And but yeah, it felt like, for the most part, it was never crowded. It was always just it was just a steady stream of athletes running up. And yeah, I mean, I think everything was super smooth there.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything standing out as being super crowded.
Yeah, I was uncertain like in the lead up to the race. Like we saw the map, right, and which was the exact same course as last year. Um, but with the bridge closed, I was like, the bridge is closed. Are we running over that bridge? Or are we running over the other bridge? And yeah, they opened the bridge for the runners. That surface was even worse than it was this time last year. You really had to watch your footing on that. But other than that, I like this run course. I know a lot of people don't. There's only one section that's like a real effort. Well, there's two, right? There's that first hill out, but you only have to do that once. And like, if someone has to walk it, then so be it. It's not that long. But that one hill, what is it, like mile 5 or something?
Battery
Yeah,
Park.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not super long, but boy, is that steep.
And for some reason, it's like twice as big on the second loop. I don't know how it gets larger, but it does.
I don't know. It's big on the first
Yeah,
loop too.
it is. It is. It is. Yeah, I think it's a great run course in my opinion. You know, the frustration we had a little bit was if you looked on the website. So I really like the way Ironman's updated their website. I'm kind of it's clean. I think it looks good. But if you look at the
Yeah,
course, they've got like an interactive map, and
yeah.
then you can click and download the PDF. And those maps for the run did not match, right?
Really?
So yeah, so if you looked, there was the coming out on the PDF, there was a little out and back, right? You kind of went out on the toward basically the way the bike course started, back, and then went down by the
Yes,
river,
yes. I did
right?
do
And we
that.
did not have and we did not have that,
That's
right?
right. Yeah, because I
They
remember
had that a couple years ago.
yeah, I remember looking at that, and we were looking at that like the night before or 2 days before, and I was like, what the heck is that? Like that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
And then on the east side of the course, so you go down the highway, take a left, and you kind of get over to the Riverwalk, run back down the Riverwalk towards town. On the, I don't remember one of the two. I don't remember if it was like the GPS file screen or the PDF. But one of them showed the little in and out zigzag, kind of where you
Mhm.
ran down the Riverwalk, back up and back
Yeah,
down. And I don't think that was there either, right?
yeah.
So
No, it wasn't.
it was, and it's silly, but my opinion. I mean, if people are paying, $400 or $500 for an event like this, like that, kind of some of the logistical details, like that was, I felt like that was a bit of a miss. But it's neither here nor there. Like we talked about it, like, hey, we know the course is going to
Yeah,
either have these two bits or it won't, and just run, right? You're running 13 miles regardless, right? Execute your effort, your nutrition, your fueling, and the course will be what it's going to be. You can't
yeah.
control it.
My pet peeve continues to be the athlete guide. I find it getting harder and harder to find information in the athlete guide. There are more pages of ads than there are athlete guide. And I'm like, okay, well, like, I was going through with an athlete the other day trying to find the cutoffs, and I'm like, where the heck are the cutoffs? Because I couldn't find them. There's
Yeah.
no table with them. They're hidden in text, and it's like surrounded by ads on all sides. So I'm
Uh,
sure
it,
that they can do something about that. Like
it
I
would,
understand why it is the way it is, but it's
yeah,
annoying.
yeah. It would be nice if they could maybe punch it all at the end, but
Yeah, but then no, then their advertisers would be unhappy because nobody would look at them.
correct,
So
exactly.
yeah, I'm like, there's got to be a cleaner way to do it though, because it's like I don't mind the ads being there, but it's like the way it's laid out though makes it hard to find the information you're looking for. All right, so yeah, like for me on the run, I haven't done, I lost a lot of training over the winter because of a hamstring injury. This was my first race where it really hasn't bothered me, although I did walk that big up, I'll be honest, because I'm still like kind of nursing it a little bit. And if you look at my run, it was like 20 minutes slower than it normally would be. But other than that, like the first lap I thought was pretty good. The I do love the aid station that's at the end of Riverwalk where the turnaround is. They got the disco ball. Although last year they had like smoke machines and stuff, and this year they didn't. And I was like, oh man. But the whole second loop, I had the theme from what was it, Go Go Gadget, in my head.
Inspector Gadget.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
I'm like, I
that's
was
a
running.
flashback.
Yeah, because they were playing like the 80s cartoon theme songs, and I was like coming up on that first bridge, and I'm like, please get out of my head.
I feel I feel like as my legs started to die near like mile 10 or 11, I'd be like, come on, go Gadget legs, like trying to
Yes,
get that
yes.
energy. And I'm sure it would obviously it's not going to work, but I'd give it a try if that song was stuck in my head. No doubt
Um,
it.
no, like that was yeah, that was something else. I'm like I appreciated it at the time. I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's
Yeah.
like, Texas at Hippie Hollow, they had like all sorts of fun songs there. And then that one I'm like, oh yeah, I'm getting into it. And then like 3 miles later, I'm like, please exit my head.
Out of my head. Get out of my
Yeah.
head.
I mean, I
That's
guess there's
awesome.
worse things to get stuck in your head, but
For sure.
it's like, okay, so I'm annoyed by that instead of, the lactate in my legs, but still.
Yeah.
But anyways, no, I thought the run was nice. I noticed they, Chattanooga, I don't know the name of the road, the space, the road between the bridges that we run on.
Fraser
Yeah,
on
now,
the north side.
yeah, they've added like a big pedestrian section now that's cut off from traffic. Like that
Yes.
was nice.
Huge. So nice over there. It was really
Yeah,
nice to see that.
yeah. I went out and I did, half of the run course, in a shakeout, and I ran over the one bridge and did the around and out, and I was like, oh, this is so nice.
Yeah.
Because last year we were doing the shakeouts, was running on the the sidewalks, but I did, like, I had to go back and check the athlete guide when I got back to the hotel after that, because everybody else was like running and cycling the course in reverse. Like, I didn't understand it, and I'm like, is the course running in reverse this year? Because I like, why is everybody coming at me? They should be running with me, but no, like, you're running from the one bridge towards the other. No, they were going the other direction. And like, what in the world? And even like running over the bridge, they were running in the other direction. I'm like, what in the world is going on? I'm like, I know I ran this last year. I know it goes in this direction, and everybody's coming at me. I'm like, I'm like, okay, it was weird, but maybe they didn't. Maybe they wanted to experience it in reverse. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Different.
it's a fun, I mean, it's a fun area to run regardless, right? Like running over the
Yeah.
bridges, over the river. It's super pretty. You got the big rock wall by the aquarium that you can see. And it's a ton of fun.
Yeah, although somehow when I'm out running, that area over there, I always end up somehow like being confronted by a set of steps. It's like I make a wrong turn somewhere and there's like a staircase, and I'm like, how did I get here? Okay, I'll run downstairs.
Yep. Little Rocky action or something, right?
Yeah. It's like well, hey, we're from Philly. We do that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Nah, there was that blue bridge, the pedestrian bridge. Damn, that feels like it's uphill both ways, I tell you.
It, it's so funny because when we were talking about that, when you look at it from Riverfront Park, right, or even from the other bridge, you look and it doesn't look like it's that steep. But then as soon as you're
No.
running up it, that start up onto the bridge coming off of Fraser, it is so steep.
Yeah,
Well,
like
it's steep. It feels steep and long, right?
yeah, like, I mean, it is long, but
Yeah.
the first half of it is like a solid grade,
It's
and
way
then
more
then
uphill than you realize.
then it kind of levels out a bit, but at no point does it go downhill. It's not
No.
until your foot hits pavement that you start getting a downhill.
Yep.
And I tell you, on the end of that second lap, I was like, oh, as soon as we're on pavement, then it's like all downhill from there until the finish line. But getting to there is like going over. And I remember that last year going over the bridge, like, I hate this bridge.
Yeah. I will tell you, because I was
but the bridge itself, I hate running over.
I think at that point, especially on the second loop, like you're not looking at the view, right? Like blinders are on and you're like, I'm just trying to get home. But that bridge is usually such a great spectator location, right? Like it is an awesome place to cheer on and just off the bridge. And obviously the spectators not being able to get on the bridge. But I was interested to see what it was like. But man, that coming off of the bridge, going all the way down around the corner, I mean, it was lined with people. I would wager
it was a little too much there.
it got crowded. People weren't giving good room.
Yeah, the first lap, it was marked weirdly, and a lot of us ended up running kind of inside of the cone.
Yes.
And they did a good job of like redirecting us to like, no, you should be on that side of the cones. The second lap was kind of the opposite, where like the spectators were like spilling into the run course. I at that point was half a mile from the finish line, so it didn't bother me as much.
Yeah.
But that was like, and it makes sense, right? Because all those people would normally be on the bridge. The bridge was kind of anticlimactic. Like I said earlier, like I was kind of watching my footing. It's the same reason I don't trail run. I'm looking at the bridge surface and I'm like, please don't break your ankle.
Right.
But yeah, I forget who the first female finisher was.
Grace Alexander.
Yeah, she was
Yep.
going over the bridge on her second lap when I was going over on my first lap. And the cyclist that was following her and kept saying to her, after this, it's all downhill to the finish line. And I remember thinking in my head, I wish I hadn't just heard that. Because I have 6.5 more miles to go.
Right. It's also funny because that was not her first time in Chattanooga. She's had very good success there, and so I think she probably knew that it was all the way down to the finish line. But super nice of them to be given some feedback like that.
Yeah. I wish I had a cyclist there hyping me up too.
Right? Absolutely. Nothing like a little hype squad on two wheels behind you while you're trying to run and suffer a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. All right. So we've gone through the run, the finish line there. I thought it was actually well organized this year than last year. This is going to sound super silly. Last year, I crossed the finish line and I'm like, I couldn't find where the athlete food was.
Really?
Yeah, last year I was like, "Where's the athlete food?" And we were directed like back over to the registration tent, because it's normally in the registration tent, and it's not at Chattanooga, right? And no, it's like back on the other side, near to the finish line. And I was like, how did we miss that? No, but there was a bunch of other people last year like doing the same thing, like wandering around, like, where's the food? But I don't know that a hoagie at a finish line is necessarily what I'm looking for, but it's better than what I've witnessed at some other races.
For sure. It's always the post race food's an interesting one. I mean, I feel like people love it or hate it, but like it's just like pizza's so easy, right? Like you can get cheese pizza, pepperoni pizza, just throw a bunch of pizza, some bananas, some sodas, some chips. Like it's easy.
My favorite one was the Atlantic City half, which there's a lot of things about the Atlantic City half to complain about, but at the finish line, it was food trucks with hamburgers and fries.
Nice.
So,
that's perfect.
Yeah, I remember going up and being like, 2 hamburgers, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to remember what was at Louisville last year. I want to say there was like some barbecue and beans, and I was like, honestly, just give me a beer.
Well, it was like, I was disappointed at Nice, right? It's the world championship, and it was like vegetarian pizza, and like it was like all vegetarian, and it was like weird stuff. I'm like, we're on the border with, there at Nice, it's like you're on the border with Italy. Could we have some pasta, maybe?
Yeah,
pizza that's not
some
like
prosciutto.
Vegan. Yeah, pizza that's not vegan.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. It's like I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that.
It's so interesting because like I couldn't tell you what was at New Zealand after the race, because I tried to get a glass of for some reason I saw like a glass of chocolate milk, and I was like, that sounds good. I took like 2 sips of it as I walked down. I was like, I can't drink this, and then just I didn't need anything. I was just trying to get out of the tent to be able to get over and see my wife, and so I couldn't get anything in.
Yeah, I don't know. Chocolate milk after a race sounds like a quick trip to the toilet.
It sounded good for like a minute, and after like a sip, it was realization that it was not good.
It's not good anymore. It's not good anymore.
Yeah. Did they have cookies in the? Sorry, this is like really important stuff. Did they have cookies at least in the boxes with the hoagies?
They did not, but they had a bin of cookies.
Oh well, I mean.
So, and I ate the cookie and I gave John the hoagie.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So at least there were cookies. Get some sugar in.
Yeah, it was like the normal. It was a cookie, and they gave you a box with the hoagie in it, and there was a couple of choices. There's a vegetarian one, a ham one, and a turkey one, I think. Being from Philadelphia, we're like really picky with hoagies, so I'm like, this isn't a hoagie, but it's all right. Bread,
understandable.
Bread, it's meat. It's cheese. When I'm like, can I have a slice of pizza, hamburger, hot dog, something that's like really bad for me? And I was disappointed though at the athlete food. There was no athletic, and I'm like, I like it when they have the athletic. It was Coke, Diet Coke, Sprite, and water. But I heard that, I don't know, athletic always seems to disappear on race day.
Really?
Yeah, you ever notice that? Like they're really strong on the first day registration, a little bit less on the second, and race day they pack that and let down.
If I'm being completely honest, I mean, I've had a couple of their their beers or
Mhm.
their non-alcoholic beers, and they're fine. But
Yeah.
I yeah, like for me, I'm like if I'm gonna have something that tastes like a beer, give me a
Yeah.
real beer, right? So I don't I that wouldn't be my choice post race. I'll take
Wow.
a Coke or a Sprite and then maybe a beer. But
Yeah,
um,
I don't really
yeah,
drink I don't really drink soda, but I'm like a
post race,
beer, non-alcoholic beer, like either one I'd be great with. No,
yeah,
I did grab a Coke. I took one sip out of it. The expression on my face said everything. I haven't really drank soda in like a decade,
oh,
and you know, the look on my face, it was so contorted. It looked like you just like shoved a whole bin of something really foul tasting or something in there. Um, John's like, could you do it again so I can record it?
right, absolutely. Well, listen, if I'm ever at a race, you get the Coke, and I will happily fall on that sword so you don't have to drink it. That's the least I can do.
That's so generous
I'm
of you.
very kind. I am so
That's
kind.
so generous. No,
Yes.
no, no. Everyone else seems to like soda. But on the course I'll take it, and
Yeah, for sure.
I'll make like a really foul face to whoever the volunteer was that gave me the Coke, and they'll be like, what did I do? I'm like, no, it's not you. It just tastes really bad. And they're like, it's Coke. I'm like, I know. That's the problem. I don't know what I expect, but it's gonna taste like Coke. All right. So anything that we didn't cover, like we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, no, I mean it was a really good race. It's just I think the big thing is just the time trial starts. I mean, they don't have an option. And again, I'll circle back to I think they made the right call making the decision early,
Yeah.
but it definitely and I don't know if I'm still a big fan of mass starts, right? Like especially like when if you're trying to be
Yeah.
competitive and knowing where you are in your age group, the time trial starts just made it even more challenging to know where people were in their age groups and trying to give splits on the tracker. I mean, you might have somebody that's hitting mile
Yeah.
that's at like a 5.8 mile split that is technically almost an hour ahead of somebody, right? But
Hmm.
that person an hour behind them actually could be 20 minutes ahead of them. And so
Yeah.
you're trying to like scroll through and give decent splits, and it's hard to do. And so that definitely is a frustrating thing, but I don't think they could have done anything about it. But I mean, Chattanooga's a great race. Like I love it there. We love the town. There's lots of places to stay, places not to stay. I can tell you those as we experienced that one this time.
Yeah.
It
Where
was
where
it
did
was
where'd you end up staying this time?
we were only about a little over a mile from everything, but we were in this like condo townhouse building that had
Oh,
been turned into it was basically like a little studio apartment room, and it
hmm.
was significantly smaller than all the pictures. Not a big deal. It's my fault because I'm really bad about booking like an Airbnb hotel whatever last minute. But it was right, like it was not insulated at all. And there was like some big festival going on Friday night, Saturday night out on the street right outside, loud music, speakers until like, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And so I was thankful I wasn't racing and was just supporting because I was like, I can be sleep deprived and coach and still be plenty
Yeah.
energetic, for sure. But racing with 2 nights of bad sleep in a row is frustrating for sure.
Yeah. We stayed last year. We stayed at, I guess it was the DoubleTree,
Mhm.
and that was nice. And it's like walking distance. This year we stayed at, is it Hilton maybe? That's directly across the street from it.
Okay.
And I would not stay there again. Yeah, like I mean, it was fine. I guess the room was reasonably clean, but just like I don't know. It's like sometimes it's like especially for what you pay on race week.
Yeah.
It's like, we should have spent the extra $5 a night and stayed across the street.
Yeah, it's like it was $600 a night for a Holiday Inn Express. What's going on here? No, I'm kidding.
And
But
those are Kona
yeah,
prices.
yeah, right. That's just that's how it is. And I mean, I guess yeah, I need to book things ahead of time so that I can try and get something that's a little better location and maybe not somewhere so loud. But it was pretty loud. We got pretty poor sleep between us before the race, but it's okay. But I think as a whole, I think it was a great race. I think you were totally right that there was a little different energy.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, it was still a great race. Chattanooga did a great job
yeah.
making it happen. So
I, I
um,
was and continue to be entertained, as the Facebook posts roll in of all the people who are like, "Look at me! I went and I swam the 1.2 miles." I've had people ask me this before because I mean, we've all done races where the race got modified, and whether it's a run race or a cycling race or a triathlon, And I'm like, I ran the race. The race director prescribed. I did the
And
race. I did the race. It was just, I feel no need to go and swim an extra 1.2 miles to say that I did it.
Yep. And I get, I mean, it's easy for me to have that perspective, I feel like, because I think, I mean, I've done probably 40 halves alone, right? So,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I didn't get to swim this one, not a big deal. But, it was interesting. We're standing there outside of transition race morning, checking in on everybody. And a guy comes running up from the river in his wetsuit and running into transition. And I thought I'm a rule follower, right? Like rules are there for a reason. Try and keep everybody safe, make sure everything's okay. And
Yeah.
I know they had talked about not swimming because there's
They
a
were
live marina.
They were very clear on that one. Do not swim.
Yeah. And I feel like, and so, I mean, he didn't even, and the thing that's funny is like, he didn't even try and hide it. Like he still had his wetsuit on. He was wet. He'd obviously been in the water. I don't know how far he swam or whatever, but I was like, man, if you're going to break the rules, like maybe don't run into transition as the only person in your wetsuit and make it super obvious.
Yeah. Be more
inconspicuous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he might have thought that he was being cool by doing that. I don't know.
I just,
but like, you're right. If it's like your first time, it has to be super disappointing that it gets canceled. I did have a few people ask me afterwards. They're like, okay, because I was there, with the foundation, and as I'm a coach just like you, and I was there with the TriDoc crew, and I had a few people ask me during the expert coach Q&A. They're like, so what race should I sign up for that's kind of like this one, but the swim's not going to get canceled? And I'm like, well, here's a few that are similar to this that are still happening this year, but I don't think anybody has any control over the weather. It's like it could happen to any race.
I mean,
but I do think
you play the cards you're dealt.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's the right call. The last 2 years, there's been a lot of races, several races. I don't know about a lot, but there's been several races where they probably should have called it and they didn't, and bad things happen.
I think after Cork, right, a couple of years ago when 2 athletes died in Ireland, I think that was a big one, and there was a lot of like back and forth. I think between like Triathlon Ireland and Ironman about decisions and
right. Well, there was that one, and then Morro Bay, where a third of the field DNF'd on the swim because the swim there shouldn't have happened at all, and it did, and they ended up giving all those folks free registrations to another race, which is great and all, but like just think these races you train for many months for, and then the expense, these are not cheap events. Like these easy are $5,000.
Now Gulf Coast, because the swim got canceled there, and some people even got kicked off the course. But Gulf Coast, I think, ended up giving people, or Ironman ended up giving people like a 50% off registration code for another race. So I don't suspect that Chattanooga is going to do that because they canceled it ahead of time. That would be my guess. But I mean, I understand it. It's a frustrating thing for sure when you're planning to have a swim, a bike, and a run, and you've trained for that event. But
we had some friends who were working registration, and so they were grateful that Ironman called it in advance of registration opening, so they didn't have to redo like bibs and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, anyways, I forgot to ask. So, did any of your athletes qualify for Marbella?
One would have already has a slot, and I don't think, and nobody else did.
Yeah, the roll downs went really far. We weren't gonna stay for roll down, we ended up staying. I'm glad we did. Like most of the races, most of the 70.3s I do are like early season races, and this is a late season. And the early seasons, my age group will have like 1, possibly 2 slots, and like the first finisher and the second finisher take that, right? And then women for try might have 1 or 2, and it's kind of the same thing. So if you're not like top 3, you're probably not getting one. And here I think that the men 50, 54 maybe went to like slot 40, 45. Like it went super deep on some of them. My age group had 2 slots. I got 1 of those 2. And then we inherited 2 slots from other age groups that didn't use all theirs. And then the women for try, I think we ended up with like 8 slots.
Yeah.
So of the 90 some odd people who finished. Like it went, my age group went pretty deep too. It didn't go quite as deep, but it went pretty deep. So it's like, the moral of the story is like always show up because you never know how deep those are going to go. Now
Yeah.
other age groups, didn't go as deep. Some were like, no, first place finisher took it, third place finisher took it, kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is kind of what I normally expect to happen.
It's always hit or miss, it seems. Try and draw correlation, right? Or, between how many slots, age groups, what rolls, what doesn't, but just can't, there's no connections. You never know. Seems.
Yeah, although I think like the late season races, a lot of people already have their slots. It's more likely to roll down. And
Oh
I think,
gosh. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And, that combined with like this race, I think, with such a large field, so many, who might not normally have finished that close to the front and might not even think to stay because like normally they wouldn't even be in the running, but this one without the swim, they had a much stronger race. And, there was just like the roll downs went so deep, not because like people already had slots, but people didn't go to roll down.
Yeah.
So the moral is always go to roll down.
Absolutely. So if you want to start, gosh, I mean, Louisville, they still had slots at Louisville in August last year for New Zealand.
Yeah.
Right. And so they basically had slot allocation and roll downs for New Zealand. And then they did slot allocation and roll down for Marbella. And like the roll downs for New Zealand.
They did both?
They had both, right? So they did New Zealand because they still had some slots for New Zealand.
Yes.
And then they had
Happy
Valley. It was
Valley
an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's kind of what this was like. Although the roll down was kind of disorganized at this one. Yeah, Happy Valley last year was the same way. But I think Tapao that late in the season is kind of a hard sell. It's like, in for was it Happy Valley is like middle of June. It's like, getting to New Zealand, getting flights and accommodations that late in the season, like that's a big expensive trip. It's like I think Lake Placid had the same problem with Nice, is like getting people to Nice. It's so close to the race and it's an expensive trip to another country. And if you don't already have a passport, that's another thing you have to deal with for those when they're in another country.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we were 8 months out, a year out, even planning for New Zealand.
Yeah,
so it was a big trip to plan for. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could go down a whole rabbit hole of roll downs and slot allocations and good, bad. I mean, I feel like I can argue both sides up and down on everything. I feel like, but I don't know.
I ended up, I could have gotten a slot for Tapao at Happy Valley last year, and I ended up not, because I'm like, when it was at Florida 70.3, I was like, yeah, I want a slot, and I didn't get one. The person in front of me took the second one. I think I was like 6th or something at that race, and I had an okay race at Happy Valley, and I was like, no, I knew at that point I was like shooting to get to Nice at Lake Placid. And I was like, no, I can't deal with this. It's too close. It's too expensive. And it's on the other side of the world in a place I've never been before. And it just, I was like, at that point, the interest had kind of gone, despite it being world. And then, of course, I had severe FOMO, watching it on TV.
Not to get on that, but I at one point I was just like, let's just not go. This is so expensive, and this is gonna be such a big trip. Let's just not go.
Yeah.
And thankfully, my wife was like, "No, we're going." And it was an epic trip. I mean, we could talk forever about that trip and touring around the South Island in a motorhome, and it was an awesome race. But yeah.
So kind of wrapping it up.
Yeah.
I think it's a great conversation. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's great. Like, as you said before, we met once in person, and it was, at the Dollar General last year. I was kind of getting on my bike and you were getting set up, and we just kind of bumped into each other. But, I thought it was a great conversation. But the big question is, are you going to be back next year?
Yeah, so we won't be at the full this year because we've not been in Augusta the last 4 years or so, maybe.
Mhm.
And so I've got a number of athletes that are willing to race Augusta. So won't be in Chattanooga again for the full, but I'm sure we will be there for either the half or the full next year. I'm not positive.
Yeah.
But definitely, I mean, we're 4.5 hours away from Chattanooga. It's such a great race. It's relatively easy to get to. There's lots of
Yeah.
places to stay. It's a fun course. I don't know if I'll race or if I'll just be supporting next year, but I suspect we'll be there at least for the half.
So what's your next race?
The USAT South Carolina State Championship is in Clemson,
Mhm.
South Carolina in June. I've got that. And then Ironman Lake Placid, which is really just after being there for supporting last year. I was like, I've 15, 16 years in the sport and I've never done Lake Placid. Like I need to do Lake Placid.
All right. Well, you know what?
Um,
You know what? You and I are both gonna be in Lake Placid, so we need to do a show in Lake Placid live
yeah,
together,
absolutely. That sounds
in
awesome.
the
Be
same
super
room.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I got to swim and bike. I did basically a loop of
Hmm.
everything. Did a loop of the swim, a whole loop of the bike. Ran a bunch of the run course, and it's an awesome course. And I was like, I have to sign up for it.
So
Um,
at Lake Placid, I'm planning a loop of the course on the bike for the foundation folks. Probably right now it's looking like to be like Wednesday or Thursday. Don't want to be close to the race and give them enough
yeah.
time to recover from it. Not a hard bike, like just a zone 2, zone 3 bike.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, going into Lake Placid who haven't done it before, they hear online, all the horror stories and fear on the Keen descent. So we're trying to line up some folks with like bike racks. So for folks who just want to do the Keen descent, like ride out to the bottom of Keen and then go back. And then some
It's a
others want to
solid.
do the full. You guys should join us for that.
Yeah, it's a solid call. I mean, I don't think we'll get in there till Thursday, maybe. We'll
Mhm.
drive up to Albany, pick up a buddy in Albany, probably
Yeah.
spend the night there, and then drive the rest of the way from Albany up there. But yeah, I mean, I think that's huge. That Keen descent can be, I mean, you can go as slow or as fast as you want, and it can get a bit sketchy if it's windy.
Yeah, last year I ended up riding it 3, 4 times before the race, and my John, he tells everyone, he's like, yeah, she rode it once and then came back, and we rode it again, and he followed me with the car to the bottom, and then we loaded my bike up on the bike rack and went back to Mount Van Hovenberg and did it again, and then rinse and repeat. We did it like 3 times that day, and I think I topped out at like 58 on the last
Yeah,
descent. Like you can do it.
you can catch 60 on that for sure
Yeah,
if you really 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 want to push and get low.
yeah. Now race day was the ground was a little bit wet, so I think we were all a little slower, but
Yeah,
not that bad. But
yeah, but
I look forward.
it's a great course.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you there, and
Yeah,
a lot of people are going to be there. I think Noel's
I
going
think
to be there again, and
I think so, and I think it's a pro race, so
mhm.
it'll be super fun. It's such a great place. So looking
Yeah.
forward to that. And then Wisconsin and 70.3 Worlds. That's all that's on the schedule right now. We're with moving. I didn't plan a lot of races or any races early
Mhm.
season because it didn't. It's just we'll just train and keep the head down and keep getting
Yeah.
ready. But trying to go and get to races for myself, low priority this time of year for me.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what next year looks like. I'm like, do we start it with Texas again or do something different?
Yeah,
But yeah, I've been
yeah.
leaning more into fulls, I think, next year than the halves.
Yeah, I mean the goal for me, I want to see if I can get a slot at Wisconsin for Kona. If I
Mhm.
do, cool, great, we'll take it. I'm going to have a really good race
Uh,
to even have a chance, but
Wisconsin's still a qualifier. Like that's pretty close, isn't it?
not for this year. It'll
Oh,
be a qualifier
that's for
for
next
next
year.
year.
That makes
Yep,
sense.
yep. And then so if I don't get a slot, we'll probably look at trying to see if we can get a slot somewhere for 70.3 Worlds in Nice next year. So I know
Yeah.
my wife would love to go to France, and she speaks French quite well. So it'd be nice to have her to help
Oh,
us get around too.
have you run that course before?
I've never been to Europe.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
I did Nice last year. The bike course, everybody's so scared of it, and I think it has a bad rap. It's a hill. You
yeah,
go up it, and once you're at the top, it's fine. Like, yeah, it's a climb. It's like I think the average is like 6% going up. So like it's an
it's just
effort, but
long.
it's not
Yeah,
horrible. Yeah, it's like 18 miles long.
think the descending scares a lot of people too. But
Last year there were in the women's field. I'm interested to see the men's this year if it's the same, but in the women's field last year there was a lot of DNFs on the downhill. People who are, kind of like really intimidated by those
mhm.
switchbacks and riding their brakes down. I kind of took a different approach. I'm like, oh, there's wall. Let's not fly over it. And I had carried a lot of speed going down. I think like the field, when you look at the bike splits, they were one or the other. There wasn't a lot in between. It was like people who were like fast going down and people who were like really slow. Like I was on my fourth lap on the run and people were still coming in on the bike. And that like
Yeah.
that blew my mind. And talking to them, it wasn't the uphill that got him. It was the downhill.
Yep. Absolutely. I think everybody initially gets scared about how much climbing it has, but then when they start getting closer, it's really more the descending piece of the puzzle.
Yeah,
I mean,
to me, the hardest part of that course is the temperature change between the start and the top of the mountain. It was a little bit precipitating at the top, and it was kind of hard to tell if it was rain or snow at one point.
yeah. I mean, it was probably a good 20 degrees Celsius different from the bottom to the top.
Yeah,
I bet, if not a little more.
Yeah, it's significant. The day before, some of the pros I was talking to were kind of going back and forth on like how they prepare for it. One of them was talking about maybe like wearing a heat sheet. I was like, oh, that would be so hot. Like, could you imagine like how hot you'd be going up? I don't think they ended up doing it, but like there was a lot of conversation about like how do you protect yourself, on that top shelf where it's cold and windy.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that course. So I'm looking forward
It,
to hopefully going to 70.3 next year there.
yeah, we'll see. It would be, I mean, it's tough. It would be, I would love to be able to do both, but that's just not, it's not in the cards to be able to
It's a
go to
lot.
Hawaii and Europe.
Well, we're struggling with that. Like, okay, so I'm going to Kona for the full. And now I'm going to Marbella. And it's like go to Kona, come back, and then 3 weeks later we fly to Spain.
Very
Like
quick turnaround.
it's very quick. And I'm like, oh my.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a couple ladies racing in Kona this year, and nothing would make me happier than to be there supporting, right? But
It's an expensive trip. It's an expensive trip for sure.
for
But hey,
sure.
it's a write-off.
Yeah, absolutely. You still got to spend it.
Yes.
You got to have it to spend.
You still have
So,
to spend it. All right,
yeah.
my friend. It was wonderful having you
Hey,
on. Thank you so much.
absolutely.
And
Happy to.
till next time.
Absolutely. We'll catch you later. Be good.
All right. See ya.
See
Bye.
ya.